Just not getting it.
And welcome everybody out there in podcast land. The Good Times with Good People Company proudly presents the Loft Party Podcast, where it is always about good times, good people, and good talk. You can search for the Loft Party Podcast on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and YouTube. You can also like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and tweet us on Twitter. Good. Now that you've received your invitation, join us. Grab a cocktail, light a cigar, or whatever you like to smoke. Tell a friend, and welcome to the party. I'm your host and moderator, Rio, and let me introduce today's panel. Of course, our returning champions, Chris O'Connor. He is the co-owner of Liquid 9 Broadcast Media Production. Dave Elliott, we like to call him Big Dave. He's the owner of CNP Construction. And the anonymous female, because she doesn't want you to know her name. So, today's episode is They Said It Couldn't Happen, or a brief look into National Geographic's list of the 100 biggest what the fucks in history, and a couple of my own. So before we get in that, let me do a couple of RIPs. One, Alan Thicke, passed away at 69. Of course, he is, now I'm blanking on the television show that he was a dad on.
Growing Pains?
Growing Pains, yeah. He was the dad on Growing Pains, and he also wrote several TV show theme songs, actually. And speaking of themes, songs, and music in general, he's also the father of current artist Robin Thicke. You may know him from his big hit Blurred Lines. And then also just passed at 99, Zsa Zsa Gabor. Was passed at 99, we found out. And I want to quickly jump to some box office news just because...
Wait, one quote from Zsa Zsa.
Uh-huh.
Zsa Zsa would always state that her former husband, she had 8 of them, would always leave her something. Their houses.
Oh, yeah. I actually do remember hearing that this morning. She said she was the... how did she put it? She was the best...
She is the best housekeeper.
Yes.
Every time she leaves a husband, she keeps the house.
That's correct. Thank you, anonymous female.
I thought that was
I knew there was something
too.
in that arena that had to be stated.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny.
That is
too.
Zsa Zsa, baby.
Yeah, that actually sounds very much like Zsa Zsa Gabor. So, and her sister was the one on Green Acres, right?
Ava.
Yeah.
And she played on Green Acres.
Yeah. Ava Gabor.
She was,
Do you want me to
Zsa
sing?
did,
No
Green
singing.
Acres song?
no, please don't.
No singing.
It'll get stuck
Sure?
in my head.
Yeah, that's
All right.
that's an
One to
earworm.
offer.
She did the TV show, not TV shows, when you're a guest on a show.
Oh yeah, she did a lot of games. She did a lot of game show appearances.
Zsa Zsa was famous by just being famous.
Yeah.
She really did.
Kardashian.
Oh my goodness! Imagine that.
Yeah, she
the
was
original Kardashian.
I think you're right. I think
Well
her
done,
and Ava
Chris.
might have
Well
been the original Kardashians. Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
What does Mario say? Strange.
That was a good one. I like that. All right, so let's jump to box office news. We don't always do that, but being a big Star Wars fan, I just thought this was pretty cool. Rogue One, a Star Wars story, had the second largest December opening ever, with $155 million in North America alone. I think it was set worldwide as of today. I think it was going to have $290 million.
That sounds right, yeah.
It's pretty, and we did go and see it out there in podcast land, and it is good. And anybody out there who ever wanted to see more of Darth Vader being a complete badass, see this one. I was excited. I was a little kid watching Darth Vader completely
really did.
destroyed.
I know, Mario, every time I looked at him, he was like... I he really was like a little kid. But yeah, they did a really good job tying 3 and 4 together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
because that's what that was supposed to be.
Yeah, it happened. It literally happens. Okay, so episode 4 opens where basically Darth Vader and stormtroopers burst onto the ship. Literally,
They board the ship.
Yeah. Well,
We had a landing party.
Would I be correct in saying that none of you three ever saw the original Star Wars in the theater when it first came out?
Excuse me, you would be completely wrong.
Yeah, be way out.
yeah.
My parents
we
took
were all,
me
we were
to
all,
You had to be really
we
little.
were all
We were
young, but
We went to the drive-in to see it.
yeah, we were all young.
Yeah.
I thought
My mom and dad were all about. I can't tell you how many movies. In fact, I was just talking to Mario about it. How many movies we went to the Twin Drive-In to see when I was
That
little.
was a big deal back in the day.
Oh yeah.
I just say that me and several of my friends went, and we were totally enlightened. And it was a very interesting experience when all that stuff started flying through the stars at you. And
Oh yeah.
it was pretty cool, actually.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Star Wars is one of the
I
things that
remember-
is
Back
just
in the
stuck
day.
with me.
I remember the scrolling and trying. My mom and dad reading it because we couldn't read that fast when we were little.
Oh yeah, yeah. You sure?
Oh, yeah.
I was saying when we were in the
Probably
theater.
my mom, not my
Yeah.
mom and dad. But
I said no. There's no spoilers, no spoilers out there. But I think the only thing that bothered me, but after we talked about it after the movie, I understood why it wouldn't have had. But there's no text crawl at the beginning of this movie. And so
well,
you
the
know,
whole
you always
beginning is different.
you always
There's no
like
pan
you're like
from-
yeah
There's no
yeah
ship. There's
it doesn't
no ship the way the ships normally happen.
right because it normally pans from outer space down to a ship or a planet and a ship, but and it starts in space and it does pan
Technically, it was
down.
Such a famous move, like it had never been done before.
Yeah.
So that's why they always is kind of an homage to.
And
Yeah, to the
did
original.
you see Seven that came out last year? So it did the same thing, but this one, I mean, there was not a ship, but there was a.
Yeah, no, it scrolls down to a planet, and
But it scrolls to a planet, but it was a fighter that was going through the air.
Right.
I mean, so there was an aircraft of some kind.
Yeah, like I
But
mean,
not-
it
not
does
the
the pan
typical.
down.
Gotcha.
It does the pan down. It just doesn't do the kind of iconic Star Wars music, nor does it do the text crawl
It does
at the
a
beginning.
version.
It does do a version,
of
but
the
it's not.
music.
It's not what you think of when you.
Well, so clearly Disney's strategy is to have major movies and slightly more minor.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Yeah,
it's like
well, and it
there
said, in
there
a
is
galaxy-
the Star Wars saga,
Right.
and then there are Star Wars stories.
Yeah, so this is just a Star Wars story, right?
You're right, and
they had the, in a long
time
ago,
ago,
in a galaxy far, far
they did
away.
that.
They
had
did that.
but
Okay.
nothing else.
yeah, but
Wow.
so
That's interesting.
Yeah,
And it was
so
really cool,
He
but-
was a little. He was
Yeah.
like,
Well, Kathleen
but-
Kennedy oversaw. She's been overseeing everything for ILM.
Yeah.
For,
Oh, yeah.
long time.
and after seeing the movie and being impressed by it, I did understand why, because it's if you think about the Star Wars stories, like because they're going to pull out specific stories or specific characters and do movies on those, they aren't part of the saga. They're offshoot stories, so they don't begin them the same way and stuff like that. So I thought that was, like I said, it was really cool.
So there was a scene in one of the ones they had on yesterday. They were playing 4, 5, and 6, or 4 and 5 yesterday. And was it in 5 where they said Rogue 2?
Yes.
Which you never catch before. You know, we're like, oh, we were both like
That's why they
it's Rogue
do.
2.
Right. So yeah, it was kind of cool.
I do like that. Like it did feel, even at the time, like it was such a well planned out
Oh yeah.
mythology and story. And I'm sure it's grown and changed over time and that kind of stuff. But I do love that they backtrack and put in like little.
Oh yeah.
Well, you have to know that he probably had some stuff written and was like, no, this isn't. I don't think this is good enough. Because
Or
wasn't
not-
he
it's not
upset
ready,
that they
yeah.
did?
Yeah, it's
7?
not ready.
Well, I remember
Yeah.
that they, when I was a kid, There was a poster that I saw in a Where'd You Start with 4? And he said, well, I had this whole backstory, but it just seemed to kind of make sense to start with 4. But then he gave the backstory back in 1977 about how Darth Vader became Darth Vader.
Exactly.
And all that. And I was like, wow, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, the mythology.
I'm sure he blew it out when he started making the movies. But
I'll tell you something that was really amazing. Well, maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can't think of what his character's name is, though. The general.
Hux?
Was it Patton?
Not the general, the Patton. You know, the one they CGI'd in.
Target. Yeah, General Target.
Okay.
He's the one in 4. No, he's the one in 4 where he says at the beginning, you know, he gives the go ahead to blow up the planet. So he's dead in real life.
He's actually dead.
But he's in the movie.
But they did a full hologram of him.
Now you might
and it was convincing.
Tell. You might be able to tell just because of the business you're in. But they did a really good job.
ILM is amazing.
I mean, there were full on scenes with him in it. So it wasn't.
Yeah, he wasn't just sitting at the table. He was a character.
With dialogue.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was good. If you like the series, I think you'll like this one.
One of the best movies to ever do that, and this was not a dead actor, it was very much alive, but it was interesting and it kind of invented this new way of doing filmmaking and perfected it, I thought, was the Mysterious Case of Benjamin Button. They literally grafted his face on all the time. That was amazing. The number of digital replacement shots they did, and that was incredible.
Yeah.
Plus, they can go on forever. You're never out of subject matter with it because you're dealing with all these worlds and all these all these races and tribes and different things
are you
and characters.
About Star Wars in general?
Yeah,
well,
overall.
There's so much that they've done. They have whole backstories. Oh, we miss Patrick. That's too bad.
Yeah, he'll be back. He's supposed to be back.
Yeah. But you know, there's animated short movies. There's the whole series that they have, the Clone Wars on Netflix.
Yeah, the Clone Wars cartoon and the Rebels cartoon that actually tell a lot of canon story. At first I thought they were kind of throwaway for kids, but they really actually tell a lot of canon story. And
interesting.
And Patrick is the one that told you about it because they tell a lot of Anakin's story.
Oh, really?
That you don't get in the movies.
Because he fought in the Clone Wars, and of course you would think it was all like a month.
Not the same actor.
Those 3 movies were such garbage. I was a kid not following up on that.
But yeah, it was really good.
Yeah.
If you like them, it's worth going to the movies to see.
Yeah, the story's amazing. The movies were cheese, though.
I accidentally bought 3D tickets. You do not need to see it in 3D. In fact, some of it
actually was pretty cool in 3D, but you didn't need to see it.
There was some of it that was back to the everything flying at you stuff.
Well, we were talking last time. Neither Dave or I can actually even see 3D stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The way it is now.
I can't see it. Period. You only got one eye, so I can't do the visual, the virtual reality, or anything. So
that's right.
I've been working on a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Well, everybody else can, right? I'm discriminated against.
It is hard wearing glasses and putting the glasses.
I'm going for disability now.
Hey,
not.
I'm like, you're like half bionic at this point. So.
I'm working on the eyeball too. It'll come one of these days.
There you go.
I'll have zoom vision and all kinds of things.
There we go.
X-ray vision will get me in trouble, so I'll have to put that on the side.
Put that on the side.
It's too bad Brian's not here. We could figure out the inflation of how much the $6 million man would be now.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, really. All right, so let's move into today's what the fuck. And the first historical what the fuck found in the National Geographic was talking about Galileo and how, of course, he originally was the one who said the Earth revolves around the sun.
Hearsay.
Exactly. And so it says here, his actual quote, I held as I stood hold, as most true and indisputable, the opinion of Ptolemy?
It's hard to speak ancient Roman.
Whatever that word is.
Yeah.
That is to say, the stability of the earth and the motion of the sun. Galileo's renunciation came on June 1633. I affirm, therefore, on my conscience that I do not now hold the condemned opinion that the sun stands motionless and the earth revolves around it, and have not held it since the decision of the authorities. But of course, that did not stop him from being on house arrest for the rest of his life.
I like the last of the quote. I am here in your hands. Do with me as you please. For having been found vehemently suspect of heresy, the astronomer would then spend the rest of his life under house arrest.
Yeah.
But still allowed him to do his amazing work and all of his crazy inventions.
Oh, yeah.
That a lot of them came true.
Yeah, a lot of them came true.
The man was a visionary.
Yeah, so it's just, to me, that particular WTF was not only did, he actually get condemned of heresy.
Did you read the bottom?
What's
The Holy Apology in 1992?
Oh, yeah, I actually do remember that.
50 years after the Roman Catholic Church denounced Galileo, the Vatican announced that the astronomer's ideas about Earth's orbit were right after all.
I actually do remember that. And, of course, in 1992, I more than likely didn't realize that he had been condemned for heresy for those
I don't
beliefs.
think they teach that in school.
No. The second WTF, the Titanic. So this particular article was focusing on J. Bruce Ismay, which he was. He was.
In the head of the White Star Line?
Yeah, he was head of the White Star Line, and he was, of course, found with the other 705 surviving passengers getting off the Carpathia, which rescued a lot of the lifeboats out of the water. And what was striking about that at the time is that the lifeboats were supposed to be primarily for women and children. Mm-hmm. So, what is this man, and particularly this high-born man, doing getting off of the boat? And he became a real pariah.
The world's most reviled, or the most reviled man in the world.
That I thought was crazy. Not that he was kind of hated at the time, because basically the captain and just about every other man on the boat went down with the ship. Mm-hmm. But I think the bigger what the fuck was that the notion that the ship was unsinkable in the first place. And he's the one who gave the order to increase the speed so they could hit land a day early.
Yeah, so they could get to near ground. I like this. Uh-huh. Subsequent inquiries found no proof of such accusations. Well, everybody died that would have been able to tell you if he did it.
Exactly. So I definitely thought that was... I remember in the movie, and I don't know if that's a real quote, but I remember in the movie him saying, not even God could sink this ship, and as soon as he said it in the movie, I was like, well, I mean, we know what happens, but even in that moment, I would have thought, well, we're all gonna die now, because you just tempted fate in a way that you should never do, and so I just thought that was hilarious.
Can I slip one in?
Yeah, please.
One I thought of today, good WTF, Roswell.
Oh, yeah?
It's one of the great WTFs in American history. because of the conspiracy and everything, the mystery surrounding it, which also leads to Area 51 and everything behind that. You know, there's all kinds of things, actual pictures of the aliens laying on cots dead and everything else, to the claims that actually 2 spacecrafts were shot down, one by an experimental American plane that had an electric pulse device that disabled the spacecraft to allow it to come down. But it happened in 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico, and apparently a farmer had gone out there and found pieces of this wreckage. The Air Force quickly wrote it off as a weather balloon.
Yeah.
But there were way too many people that seen what they saw, and of course were sworn to secrecy. And you know, if there were bodies, you know, if there was a spacecraft that got hustled out of there and quick.
Yeah.
And like I said, may have ended up in Area 51. So hard to say, you never know. But I think that's a great WTF moment in American history, because even today it has a huge cult following. I mean, they still go there every year for the Roswell incident, and they all. I believe Roswell has a space alien head on all their lampposts. Am I correct on that?
If I'm not mistaken,
and different things. So
yeah. I think the biggest kind of WTF is, you know, how, despite whatever evidence, you know, how many people believe or disbelieve, you know, for that matter, that Area 51 is or isn't a real thing. You know,
Someday we'll all know.
Yeah,
Area 51 is a real thing.
Yeah, like Area 51 is a real thing.
Yeah,
don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, exactly.
Area 51's some real shit.
Well, it's a no-fly zone, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a no-fly zone. You can't drive within a mile or 2 of it.
No, because the people that work there are bussed in every day.
Yeah, they actually, if you try to drive up on it or walk up on it, the armed army jeeps will meet you and turn you around politely, post haste.
Oh, sure, definitely politely.
So I'm always the question with Area 51 that I always thought was interesting was, you know, is it what people what the rumors say it is, and you know that's where they've got the downed spacecraft and the alien bodies, or is it just where America develops its kind of top secret technology and we don't want anybody near it? I mean, I think for the most, I guess sane and cynical, that would probably be what they would assume that it really is. I don't know. I'm not gonna. And the reason I don't know is because, you know, there's been so many people who said they've either seen a UFO or have been abducted by aliens or something crazy like that. But I think what do you think happened to me? Well, I think what's more interesting
Why the hell they gave you back?
What do you think they gave me back? I mean, I fell off 24 foot off a building. God wouldn't take me, so why would an alien take me?
Yeah, I think what's interesting really is not that so many people have said that they've seen it or it's happened to them, but that so many of the stories are exactly the same.
But then put yourself back in the late 40s where you're in the middle of a Cold War. There's all kinds of bizarre things going on. I'm sure we were testing out all kinds of crap.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe that everybody saw something bizarre that they had never seen
before.
It was weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the stories match up, and that's great. Do I think it's an alien? No. Although I am one who does believe in alien life forms, and I think it's
You don't believe they're going to come here and attack us?
I don't think you would send one ship.
No.
Let's go check out this planet with one ship and an alien in Mexico. That just seems ridiculous.
Send one little scout ship, see what happens with one little alien in it.
Cool. Yeah. Anywhere else. What does seem weird to me, and I've always thought this, because I do believe it's probably a massive testing facility for all kinds of crazy crap.
Mm-hmm.
But now, if you're another country, you know where we test all of our crazy crap at. So we're going to bomb anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, if you're going to bomb something, you don't bomb there first.
Oh, I'm sure Area 51 is probably one of their targets.
I have a feeling probably nothing really happens there, but the mystery and illusion of keeping that up, it was just fun. So you're busting people in every day.
I mean, it could just be it could just be where like America's like server farm is or something. Like it's just a bunch of IT tech geeks in Geek Squad going in there every day.
Just lined up.
It's funny.
That reminds me of another one. I'm surprised this one did not make the list, which is probably a little more serious, but the whole idea of the Manhattan Project in the first place. Nuclear bomb in the exact same area, which is a little alarming when you think about it.
Yeah, it actually wasn't in the National Geographic at all, and I was kind of surprised.
It's not a goof or a gap, but I mean, what it is like in terms of WTF moments, that's got to be one of the biggest, in history.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've just now invented the power to destroy the entire planet. Congratulations.
Back
to WTF to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of
Dr. Strangelove.
Great. I'll tell you the one I like even more is Failsafe.
Yeah, that one too.
Which I thought was a brilliant film.
Yes. Speaking of destruction in a different way, that gets us to the next thing on the list, the 2008 financial meltdown. So, of course, we know it starts with Lehman Brothers, and they're doing, of course, all of their financial risky financial tools. And
I love this first couple sentences of the.
Go ahead, read. So it says Lehman Brothers CEO Dick Fold. I'm gonna say.
It's unfortunate.
Exactly. expected his employees to be the best dressed people on Wall Street. Appearances mattered. Yet below the natty exterior, there was rot.
That just sounds so horrible, doesn't it?
Lehman's lending practices and risky real estate ventures had pushed Fold's kingdom to the brink of collapse. In the face of disaster, which of course the puns and plays on words are amazing. In the face of disaster, the cocksure CEO dismissed offers to buy Lehman assets that might have saved his company. And on September 15th, 2008, Lehman Brothers was forced into bankruptcy, the largest in American history, with $613 billion in debts outstanding. And quote,
all he could say was,
I feel like I want to throw up.
Yeah. So did the thousands of people that lost all their money.
Yeah. And of course, that was just the tip of the iceberg that, led us to having to do a complete bailout of our banking system.
Did you read this? The bailout into the lap of luxury?
I did read that, although I kind of grouped them together because they're both bailout stories.
I knew we heard about this, but I didn't realize it was this much money.
Oh, the AIG.
What do you do with an $85 billion government bailout?
Yeah.
You go to a resort
and
spend.
This also goes to something that caused me a great deal of pain and stress, which was Dodd-Frank and Fannie Mae and the redlining of loans to people that really couldn't afford loans, afford houses, and really led to the foreclosures that crashed. This is kind of an after effect of it.
It is,
but Dodd-Frank really brought a lot of this on, and it is something, in my opinion, that really hasn't been put out there too much. For some reason, nobody wants to attack Dodd-Frank for it, but I think they were a great participator of it.
I think they did, but I think the overshadowing of the fact that the money that the banks got to help the people and keep their businesses open, they spent on themselves.
Yeah.
Come on. I mean,
Well, not all of
it, but
definitely.
minority. And in fact, you had the United States government forcing Bank of America to buy, Merrill Lynch at that point, I guess.
That was the redlining.
It was ridiculous. And again, if you really trace it back, the roots of it were in the Carter administration, where they made a law that said if you want to have a bank in a specific area, you have to lend X percentage within a certain radius of that area. And you had a shit ton of people who were not creditworthy in a lot of areas where these banks wanted to have locations. So then they were forced to, once again, by the brilliance of the U.S. government, to give loans to people who couldn't afford them. And the banks didn't want them on their books, so they would just package them and sell them as high-risk notes to somebody else, which is how the entire thing collapsed.
But they knew
Clinton
for
redoubled
years
down on it.
before.
Dodd-Frank certainly didn't help either. And once again, the same stupid asses who made the problem in the first place, and now feel all this righteous injustice. We have to give you all this money to bail you out. Well, you should bail them out. I'm not saying what the banks did was right. I'm saying the situation was created once again by a stupid ass government interference, and they should have just left the market alone.
So
and
kept
you never
their
would have been in
asses
this
out of
place
it.
in the first place.
I agree with
You
that,
never would have
but
been
what
in
you
this.
do with the money that you're given by the government that caused the issue, in your
The same
opinion.
government who decided that they can devoid themselves of Obamacare, but everybody else has to go on it. That's a great one.
Mm-hmm.
We have our own separate health care, but the laws don't apply to us. They only apply to you. That's the rules that the government makes. It's a complete load of bullshit.
Yeah, now, that's always kind of bothered me about Obamacare. On a completely side note, is that the government health care did not roll into Obamacare. They kept their health care plan. They made everybody else buy insurance from these insurance carriers.
Well,
I thought
they're always above the law.
It's Orwellian. I mean, you
I
can
shouldn't
always
say above the law. It's
Orwell
they have a
was so
different set of
spot on
laws.
with those books. It wasn't even funny in what he wrote because.
Yeah.
And either you look at it, 1984 or Animal Farm, either one of them,
Yeah.
spot on.
So, but if you really think about it, and I'm not certainly defending them, but really, when you look at the overall percentage, yes, is it a gross number to say we spent $443,000 on it of just jacking around? Yeah, out of the $85 billion, that is what 0.0001% of the money that they got. Yep.
Yeah, well, I think
the government wastes that on a daily basis.
I think the what the fuck isn't
It's
the amount.
I think it's insulting.
Well, yeah, I think it's not even the amount. It's the fact that we dodged that bullet, or the government helped us dodge that bullet. We deserve a vacation. That's the what the fuck.
I understand the hubris involved, and I think it's horrendous, and I think it's appalling.
And they did that, and they gave the bonuses out.
Yeah, that was the system. I mean,
Yeah.
who do you want? Do you want to get the worst people involved in there?
Yeah.
I mean, my God, this is why you pay your CEOs and executives big dollars. You need the best of the best talent, and so it's just a proportional thing.
I mean,
You're
there was
competing against all
a
kinds of
year, the first year that we had a layoff ever in our company history.
Mm-hmm.
Our CEO didn't take, he gets shares every year, whatever.
Sure.
He didn't take any of that.
What a great guy. Steve Jobs earned a salary of $1. You'd guess how much he was worth? Billions.
I know.
But
but that's my
because
point.
they take stock instead.
At some point you can say no, but no, you're fucking greedy and you're going to take it
I
anyway.
promise you, your CEO did very well that year. Had no
Well, I'm
problem
sure he
making
did.
money, and there was all kinds of shit on the back end, and it's a very nice public move to say, I'm not going to take a salary like Trump.
It
did.
wasn't.
Actually,
It
yeah.
wasn't public. It wasn't made public.
And we'll get
though.
to
You don't need to
WTF
pour
Donald
it.
Trump later. But let's move backwards. Actually,
Way back,
Columbus discovering the New World.
1492.
So
He discovered what though? Really?
so this is what's interesting that I thought. So when he is regaling to the Queen what he discovered when he got there. He said, they brought us parrots and balls of cotton and spears and so many other things. They willingly traded everything they owned. They were well built with good bodies and handsome features. They did not bear arms and did not know them, for I showed them a sword. They took it by the edge and cut themselves. Kind of regaling what the natives were like when he landed in the Americas. But the next part is what you never actually hear about, and that is, says Columbus saw the vast potential in the natives he met that fateful day, and he says they will make fine servants. So with 50 men, we could subjugate them all and make them do whatever we want. And so he did. And a detail that is oft overlooked when we talk about Columbus discovering America or celebrating Columbus Day. Which is why I actually know several people who don't celebrate Columbus Day, and that is the very reason why. It's,
The only thing that troubles me about that, Rio, is that you have to go back to what was reality in that time period. And in that time period, the Spaniards or the bourgeois, whatever you want to call them, could have been the French, could have been the English, could have been any of them. That's what they did. They took the indigenous people, they conquered them and used them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess
it was not a frowned upon thing. The worst thing that actually happened about Columbus landing was that the disease they brought with them. The natives were not immune to those diseases, and it killed many of them.
Smallpox.
That's the worst thing that happened there. It was not the fact that they were used as indentured servants. It was the fact that they lost a great deal of their population due to the disease. Now, Columbus didn't mean for that to happen, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
But the fact is that was the bottom line cause of it. And if you want to have a WTF, that's really the worst thing than them taking indentured servants, because that was a very common practice of the day.
Yeah, well, I think yes, to your point, but I think I want to go ahead and call a spade, because I don't think that he was taking indentured service. I think he was just enslaving people, because
enslaving and indentured service, however you want to talk them. They use them to do their labor.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just the semantic of indentured servant means that at some point you can buy your freedom. And I don't think that
maybe I used the wrong term, but they put them into slavery.
Yeah.
And used them for their purposes.
Yeah, but you're right. I think
that is exactly what they did with all things in those days.
Yeah, no, I think every major power at that time did just that. But I guess the WTF for me was the fact that little fact is the thing that they leave out of the history book. When you're learning this stuff in grammar school or high school, it's he wouldn't have discovered America, and they brought him corn, and it was beautiful. But they don't say.
But that's what they want to. That's what they want to teach children.
Yeah, and
they want to teach children about the founding of our world in a better light.
And I don't agree with that. I guess that's my problem.
And as they become older, then they can turn around and delve in themselves, hopefully, and go back in history and find out what some of the real truths were.
Well, it's funny.
Because with any conquest, any time, anywhere, there's good of conquest, there's also bad of conquest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was actually having this conversation, and we were talking about parents and kids, and it kind of really...
Talk about a conquest.
It kind of is the same thing. I was saying that at a certain point, kids who have issues with their parents or or the way they were raised, at some point, just want their parents to acknowledge what they didn't do right. Not necessarily, groveling, whatever, but hey, you know what? I'm sorry. I did the best I could, or the best I knew how at the time. And I think it kind of works the same because for most cases throughout history, there's never been a time where, the conquering says to the conquered, even after, the occupation or whatever is done, you know what? We were wrong,
Well,
and it has happened a couple of times. I won't say it's never happened.
The Vatican apologized to Galileo. I mean, they were 400 years too late, but they did it.
I think everybody's made a formal apology at this point, but it's too little, too late, and it's hundreds of years after it happened.
Well, I have a good example. My father was not my best friend. My father was my father.
Yeah.
And he was hard on me. He's a very stern man. And I don't know, I think I was in my late 20s, maybe I think it was maybe even after I moved out here. And this is before my father was not a drunk, but he quit drinking in his latter years. And he turned around and looked at me and says, I was probably too hard on you. Kind of maybe stand back a minute. And I paused and I looked at him. I said, well, let me tell you something, you probably weren't hard enough.
But you know what?
I was that hard-headed.
But that bit of
it made a difference.
Self-analysis on his part made a difference.
And
I think
these are good things when they happen.
Exactly, and which is where I was going.
It turned around and took our relationship and put it on a little bit different plane.
Exactly.
We never got to the point, fortunately, that where we said "F you."
Yeah, no.
He just plain old didn't talk to me for a long time.
But when it came back around,
I don't know
and then when my father died early in life, we
we
didn't have those regrets, and that was a very important thing.
And that is a very important thing. So, moving forward. Excuse me. And this is something that is near and dear to the Pendergast Club in particular. Dewey defeats Truman. Really? So, the papers on the East Coast printed Dewey defeats Truman, and they, excuse me, printed about 150,000 copies of the paper that got distributed, even though Truman defeated Dewey. And at one point, President-elect Truman stopped for a photo opportunity at just some erroneous newsstand and held up the paper.
Wasn't that in St. Louis?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was. And I just thought that was definitely, yes, we get it wrong from time to time, and I noticed in the past 2 or 3 elections, you've had like news channels, excuse me, call states too early or something like that,
like Florida.
Yeah, but never the election too early. I don't remember that happening.
I wonder. I'd be curious. Of course, Truman was a Democrat.
Yeah.
Did he win the flyover states? Did he have a similar victory? I'd be interested to go back and see the maps.
Sure.
To see if he won a similar victory to what Trump did.
No, he did
and
not.
were the Democrats even what we would consider Democrats today? Or would they be considered what we would consider Republicans today?
No, I think starting with FDR, Democrats really took on more of the progressive. Strangely, it was actually the Republican Party who you would have called the Democrats under Theodore Roosevelt.
Right.
And he was very much a progressive. In fact, when he ran the Bull Moose Party, that was one of the most progressive platforms in United States history, and yet he goes down as one of the staunchest Republicans of all time. But he was known for busting trust and wanted universal health care and all these things that FDR tried to put through in the New Deal. So no, I think by the time Truman came around, it was very much the Democratic Party as you know it today. The one weird thing, though, that I always thought was interesting is just the way they do the polling.
Yeah.
So if you think about the way that they were polling people back then, and they had made this mistake several times, they would call people. Well, only the wealthier people had phones. And so everybody was like, oh, I'm a Dewey supporter, and this is amazing. And
Right.
Truman was on a freaking train crisscrossing the country all the time, talking like every single farm you could find. You could just
Exactly.
stop and go up. And
Yeah, I was
so-
about to say,
Well,
that strategy sounds very familiar.
That strategy is Trump's strategy.
I mean, how many times did Hillary go to Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Not a one.
Yeah, not a one.
And where did she get her ass handed to her? Wisconsin.
Well, exactly.
So these things don't happen on accident.
No, they kind of don't.
So
They kinda
and I thought it was
don't.
interesting that there was a printer strike, so they were forced to run with a story just to get a newspaper
Just to
out.
get a newspaper out.
I hadn't heard that part of the story.
Yeah. So. Hey, what's going on, podcasters? Let's acknowledge the good friends of the Loft Party Podcast. The Majestic Restaurant and Pendergast Club, carrying on Kansas City's tradition of great food and great jazz, 931 Broadway in Kansas City, Missouri. The J. Rieger Kansas City Distillery, whiskey, gin, vodka. That is, oh so good. And friend of the podcast and panelist, Lane Boland, managing to keep the podcast going. Apparently wealthy or not. Now onto our regularly scheduled program.
What a lot of people in podcasts probably don't realize, land out there, Truman never took a pension after he was done being president. Never took a dime from the government.
Well, he did very fine writing a book, and the government provided him a personal secretary, and he is a very nice presidential library, which they did contribute to and still contribute to. And he did have Secret Service for the rest of his life.
Yep.
But you're right, they did not draw pensions.
He did actually not drop us.
But there wasn't a federal rule in place that said you got to either. So that wasn't until later.
All right, now let's move way forward. And a little category I like to call, look at me, I can, or the birth of reality TV. Personally, one of the biggest what the fucks out there. Now, the funny thing is,
It really didn't start with the Kardashians.
no, which is what I was about to say. The funny thing is, the article in National Geographic actually focuses on the Kardashians, saying that, you know, it used to be that, you know, you were famous because you could, you know, tell people about your accomplishments or whatever. But with the advent of reality TV, you know, you had people becoming famous just because they were pretty or, you know, mildly interesting to watch. And like I say, it focused on the Kardashians and their show, but I want to take it back even further than that, because really, I've never considered the Kardashians a problem or the problem. I want to go back to the first real reality show. So,
The real world.
so,
It was not,
The
not even close to the first real reality show.
so, well,
It was in the first real popular one was a British one in the 70s. Where
yeah,
they
I was
still
just
do
going to
it.
say.
For every
I was just
7 years they
going
do
to
that.
say there was a British show that started in the 70s, but for American television in 73, there was a show called An American Family that was, you know, a real reality based show. And
This was in the 1970s?
yeah, it was in 73. But for the birth of what we would call a modern reality show, I would say, let's go to 1992 and the real world.
And they're saying here,
And the
sorry.
beginning of the end of being on television because you had a talent. Now, I will say this. The first couple of seasons, maybe even 3 or 4 seasons of The Real World, were actually pretty interesting. But as the Real World blossomed into, you know, 1,000 other shows, you know, it may culminate with the Kardashians and people having no clue as to why they're famous in the first place. But without the Real World taking, as they say, 7 strangers and put it in my house and seeing what happens when people stop being polite and start getting real. If they didn't do that, and then every reality game show and every, you know, getting voted off the island or out of the tribe or racing across the country or whatever, we probably wouldn't just be looking to keep up with the Kardashians.
I would
like
disagree tremendously. And,
Well, yeah, you're in this industry, so
well, nobody's in the industry more than Justina's, but she has actually worked on several reality shows. But I would say if you trace back the history of it, not only was the British show 7 Up, 14 Up, 21 Up, and all that stuff a huge influence on television. What you also had that they don't say here was you had a writer's strike shortly after in the mid-90s.
Yes, it's true.
Where all of a sudden people realized, well, we don't need writers. We can get rid of writers altogether. These shows are exceptionally cheap to make. And that's when you started seeing major networks pick up reality shows because you can do them non-union.
But they're not reality.
Right.
They're still scripted.
So there's a difference. There's scripted reality and then reality.
Right.
And then you have the idea of
Before you go on, tell everybody out there in podcast land what your name is.
Justine Lavelle.
And what do you do, Justine?
I'm a TV rep.
That's what we heard.
We'll take that. We'll
Explain
take that
what
vague.
TV
We'll take that vague title.
It's a girl who moved from LA to the Midwest and now is representing herself in the TV market.
Trying to
Okay.
sell television shows into networks.
So, yeah.
All right. So please go ahead.
So the real world, well, where do you want me to start? You have different kinds of reality shows.
It's probably
You
a good
have
place to start.
The Real World, which was the first of its kind in the fact that they tried to tape it with just cameras going 24/7, 24/7.
Right.
And then you had the 90s, and TV producers decided that it was a lot cheaper to do something called scripted reality. And then comes the Kardashians, and then comes the Real Housewives of
and Big Brother.
and Big Brother,
Even Big
and
Brother is
even
somewhat
Amazing
scripted.
Race. It's all semi-scripted. Even Survivor, they set up things. I mean, I don't know anybody who works on those shows and doesn't have something that they have to fake to get the story to move along. So The Real World was actually the first reality show.
Okay.
And then it cost so much money and time that slowly over time it progressed into this scripted reality.
Yeah, 'cause you had cameras and
So we call it
cameramen.
reality shows for lack of a better term because most of America doesn't understand that. So you just call everything reality. But when you're in LA, there's scripted reality, there's follow along reality, there's different versions of shows you can pitch.
And I would say even, and I did watch the first season of The Real World. I loved it. I thought it was great.
That was Seattle, wasn't it?
No, it was in New York.
That was in New York.
And it was the whole thing. If you remember the characters, they had they set up these storylines that one they didn't even know were going on. That they did all through editing. So they faked a romance between a girl named Julie from the South and Eric, the bodybuilder guy.
Oh yeah.
None of that crap ever happened. That was
So
all
it was
fake.
faked or it was real reality?
What happened
It
was
a setup.
they created the
Situational
storyline
reality.
through editing. They had so much footage that they were able to find storylines that they edited in such a way that made it look like this was happening when it wasn't happening at all.
Right.
And they didn't know anything about it until they saw the show. They
So-
didn't know that there was a romance
So that's
between
just-
them.
So it was
That's lying through editing.
Yeah, kind of.
right. Well, it's like it's
Editing
all
really
now
is the art
lying
of
through
lying.
it.
So,
Yeah.
oh my God, are you guys trying to tell me the Duck Dynasty is scripted?
It's all scripted.
Yep.
Oh
And
my
like, not
heart!
only that,
Oh,
Yes, sir.
One of the key
I have
facts-
been destroyed.
actors is making, and the reality shows I worked on, is making real people actors. And that is the challenge that producers have. And it is
Not the
fun.
easiest thing to do.
But it's all in casting and it's all in training because
And
Duck Dynasty had
Finding
the
the
advantage.
personalities.
Right. So they had the executive producer of National Geographic, which was 1,000% pushing Duck Dynasty. They knew those women were
I did not know that.
really, really smart women. It's not the men that make that show. It's actually the smart women.
Oh, I agree with you on
And
that.
so they pushed that. The first season of Duck Dynasty, if you look it up, they totally failed. The ratings were not that good. But the next season, and it's like, what comes first? The ratings, or do you give people crap, or do people want crap? If you keep on giving them crap, they'll keep on wanting it. So, I mean, I always have this discussion. It's just, they learn to love it. America learned to love it. And if you keep on giving the same thing over and over, they'll
Oh, yeah.
love it.
I like this quote.
Being somewhat of a coon ass, I love that show.
What were you
I
about-
get it.
What were you about to say?
I like this quote from Vanity Fair.
What does it say?
In 2009, Vanity Fair bitterly summed up the trend. The influence of reality TV has been insidious and pervasive. It has ruined television, and by ruining television, it has ruined America.
Wow.
And I can
That
argue
wasn't nice.
for Vanity Fair being part of the decline of real journalism.
All right.
So,
All right.
Tell us how you read it.
Slow down.
why do you think you only see celebrities on their covers trying to push magazines? Really, they're hard hitting.
Or issues.
Yeah. So we'll go from ruining America that way to ruining America's pastime, and that is sporting. So in the National Geographic, they had two stories that were side by side, and I thought they actually kind of both were definitely what the fucks. First would be when McGuire and which they don't mention him. Sosa were going for the home run races, and McGuire broke Roger Maris's record in '98
As a Cardinal.
Yes.
Yes, St. Louis
yes.
Yeah.
But he was, of course, he had later admitted to taking steroids in the years after that, between like '98 and '09. 10 other players that reached the career milestone of hitting 500 home runs. A lot of those people were either
Did he admit
found to.
They weren't technically steroids.
McGuire, yeah.
At the time, they were a drug that they did. I remember that story.
They were taking HGH.
The story you're thinking of is that they found androcreatine in his locker, but baseball did not ban that, and you can get that at a GNC.
Yes.
That's completely different.
And then they did further digging and found the HGH.
Vulcan labs where everybody was going.
Yeah,
Exactly.
well, that was the
That's it,
what's
you
his
started
name
to flip
from
on
New
it.
York that got caught up in that.
Well, Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, I mean, they all did.
I want to tell a quick little side note. It has nothing to do with anything except for, you mentioned Mickey Mantle and Billy Martin. Two well-known boozers. Had a friend of mine, older friend of mine, he's in his 80s now. He had a duck camp up by Squaw Creek. And I guess Mickey Mantle and Billy Martin used to like to hunt ducks. And they'd go out and drink all dang night. And their place they actually hunted was the piece next to him. But he would send parties out in the morning, show up, and Mickey Mantle and Billy Martin be passed out in one of his duck blinds waiting to hunt. So they were two major characters, let me tell you, both of them. Both of them really had it going on. Of course, Billy Martin, when George Brett had the pine tar incident, was the manager of the Yankees. And he was the one that turned around and threw that pine tar thing at him. That caused George to go ballistic.
Even though I knew about it innings before.
Anyway, didn't mean to interrupt, but that was a story worth telling.
Yeah. What I find a little bit hypocritical is, one, the owners knew about it, they didn't care. In fact, to a certain degree, they encouraged it. Baseball never had any rules against it, which was their own fault. If they were so outraged about it. And beyond that, the TV ratings were through the roof. And I can't imagine, if you remember that they had the strike in the early 90s, nobody was watching baseball. That almost killed baseball.
Yeah, it actually
and
did.
then all of a sudden you had this amazing home run race.
Right.
And I don't care why. In fact, I would encourage them to pass a rule saying you should take HGH and beyond it because the game's way better.
Well, they turned around and brought the game back, so Major League Baseball was willing to turn their head and say, I see nothing, and this is good for baseball. This is getting it kicking again.
Well, and this is so
until it started tearing them down with the Jose Cansecos and
it's so topical right now because they just let Bud Selig in the Hall of Fame. Well, he presided over the entire steroid era, knew about it, and was the beneficiary of everything good that happened in baseball during that time, based on the fact that you had a lot of juiced up players.
Absolutely.
So, it's a little ridiculous to me, and I certainly do not blame the players.
But I can assure you, none of the Red Sox were juicing.
Really? Roger Clemens just had a natural cannon of an arm.
And on that note,
We're very, very strong.
On that note, we're going to go from one lie to one liar. In a piece that I like to call "My President Just flew away. And so another
Louis
Louis C.K.
said, my president just quit being the president. He got in a helicopter and
just
flew away.
I am not a crook.
Yeah. So, and of course, what WTF we're talking about is Nixon.
Tricky Dick.
So, what was it? August of '74. Convicted of high crimes for covering up.
Wasn't convicted. Was facing an impeachment.
And,
Yes.
and decided to
resign. It says here that history will treat me more kindly than my contemporaries.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's borne out.
Yeah, this is actually true. Yes, I think so. But I thought that the fact that and of course you probably can, but in modern history, I can't remember another president just saying, "Okay, I'm done," and leaving the office. So that definitely had to get on the list of what the fuck.
Yeah, not leaving the office for sure, but
Will history.
There were a lot of presidents who basically abdicated all their responsibilities to other people and said, screw it, I'll just hang out till I'm done and then leave. And then there were other presidents who were so incapacitated, but they kept it from the American public. Woodrow Wilson was a shell of a human being during the last 2 years of his presidency.
Well,
His
they
wife
said
ran the
that
government.
they figured out that Reagan had Alzheimer's during his last term.
Nancy Reagan was in charge of a lot of things and signed, actually kind of forged his name on a lot of documents.
Yeah.
Still had some kick-ass speeches, though.
You also got
Will
to know-
history treat me more
Kennedy-
kindly than my contemporaries?
Kennedy broke
I've heard
into,
that.
other
that's
offices.
a
That wasn't a major thing. Kennedy certainly had a number of
It's
dead
just a
people
matter
running
of who
from
gets
Chicago.
caught and who doesn't.
And that's
I totally
Very
agree.
true.
And he was a moron for taking everything.
Yeah.
Which
Which takes us from one president to another, in what I like to call Bill and the Blue Dress.
I like their title.
Can I sing now?
And who
Deviled
gets
by
caught
a
in
blue
the-
dress.
Yeah, but Deviled by a Blue Dress.
Still can't sing the Blue Dress song?
No, but thank you for offering. January '98, when he vehemently denied having an affair with a certain White House intern. I want you to listen to me, the president declared, finger pointing with indignation. I am going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. And of course, however, we know that
He was a lawyer.
I did
so-
have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky. That
Well,
was
he
not
didn't.
appropriate.
Every male in America.
It was all one-sided. All
Definitely
one-sided.
one-sided.
This is crude, but it's true. Every male in America now will say a BJ is not cheating.
Well, I don't know if I would say it's not cheating. What I would say is when they were asking him in the deposition, when Ken Starr was grilling him for hours, the question was, did you have sex with him? And that became the question.
And he hit him with the lawyer semantics.
And then he goes, it matters what the word is.
Yes.
Which is one of the greatest lines.
My wife did not understand this logic and threatened me with every inch of my life if I decided to venture that way, so I did
As
not.
any wife
Should.
I technically
that's
agree
not
with
in
him.
an open relationship would.
I, in a weird way, bizarrely, as a dude, technically agree with the guy in the sense that if you ask, did you have sex with her? No. Yeah.
But
Sure looks like a sexual act to me.
That's
Yeah.
open.
He
The
didn't say
relations.
sex,
Yeah.
sexual
No,
relations.
but it's how the question was asked.
No, in relations makes it open.
Yeah, but they didn't say relations.
He said
He
sex
said relations. They just asked, did you have sex with the woman?
Yeah.
And he was like, no, I did not. And so he actually added the word relations
I know,
in his
and
response.
all the hardcore feminists out there are going to be
Yeah.
pissy about it.
I mean, but you
it's
know,
the
it's-
truth.
Slick Willie had his ways.
All right, so we'll go from a president to an OJ.
No J.
So
J to an OJ.
So now this is what's so the actual OJ case is. I'm not going to even put that as the what the fuck. Here's the what the fuck. So because and rightfully or wrongfully, I'm going to say that, as being the only black person sitting at the table, rightfully or wrongfully, black people in America were like, oh my God, a brother got off for killing a white woman in America? I can't fucking believe it. That's actually what the celebration was about. It wasn't that they didn't believe he did it. It wasn't that they didn't want him to go to jail for doing it. They just couldn't believe it happened in America. So, you get off. You more than likely, I'm going to say more likely because I believe you did it. You more than likely did this shit. But I don't know if he did it, but that's why I say more than likely. You more than likely did this shit and got away with it. So what do? You get mad at somebody for stealing some memorabilia of yours, and you go with some friends and start pistol whipping people to steal your shit back, and you get thrown in prison any goddamn way.
Chris does not agree with this, but that is karma at its finest.
Yeah, hey,
that's karma. That's karma.
And
Chris
then
does
you
not
wrote,
believe in karma.
And then you write,
I have to agree with Novel's female on that. That is karma. You know, we have an old saying in my business: "What goes around comes around."
Definitely.
And then you get a book deal, and I don't even know if the book actually came out. I can't remember.
It did not. She approached him about the book. Judith Regan is one of the most famous publishers in American publishing history. Approached him about the book. They wrote this entire book together.
Yeah, if I did it.
Yep.
The name of the book.
Not only did they not release the book,
if I did it,
she immediately was fired.
Big question mark.
Yeah.
Like 3 question marks.
She got fired the next day.
Are you serious right now?
Did she?
She got what?
She got fired the next day.
Oh, yeah.
That would be like firing the biggest publisher in American history. Yeah, I mean, you're losing a shit ton of money by firing her.
But
the backlash was such that not a good idea.
If I did it.
But from her point of view,
this is how I would have did it.
It would have been an amazing book.
It would have been amazing.
That is stupidity, though. Really, I
would have read that book so fast.
People would have read it. People would have read it, but
there's trashier books out there.
There are. But that was so controversial an issue that why would you ever think to write it? I guess I want to make some money.
Well, one, he couldn't. So the entire story is even more bizarre. He had a very, very, very crafty financial guy do this exceptionally convoluted trust scheme, and that's actually where the money was being funneled into. Because remember, he still owes the Goldman $33 million.
Yeah.
So he can't collect any money.
Right.
The only thing they can't touch is his NFL pension. So a guy set up a trust for him that he was going to draw a pension on based on proceeds of the book. And so it was a very crafty way of avoiding the entire civil suit.
So can I plug a friend's show? It's on Investigation Discovery, and it's O.J. Innocent, and it's the missing evidence, and it's all the recent evidence. It's a 3-part special, and it starts on January 15th, 2017.
They never found the recent evidence. Is a lie.
But it's a really good show.
Like when they said they found the knife that the cop had in his house, and it not to be the knife.
We will see.
One day we should do a podcast just on this because I will defend to the day I die.
Once again, that's why I say I think he did it, but I don't know for sure. But yes, I think
everybody except Chris thinks he did it.
But you know
nobody
what?
knows the case.
He was a perfect example of innocent until proven guilty. They could not. They jacked up that investigation so bad.
You can't point to a single piece of evidence that was not tampered with by the police.
Oh, absolutely.
And you also would have to convince yourself that the guy was so stupid he was able to commit the murder. He decides to take off one glove and leave it at the crime scene.
Exactly.
Drives home. There's hardly any blood in his car except for what blood they did find had lab preservative in it. Then he climbs over his fence, takes off the other glove, and leaves that in his backyard. But then, no bloody clothes, no bloody weapon, no anything else could they ever find.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. That's just too stupid for words.
Yeah.
It was so clearly planted,
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, again, I won't say he didn't do it, but I am saying police corruption is infinitely worse.
Oh, and LA police corruption is famous, yeah. Yes, and I know you're from LA, but Yes, the LA police are famously corrupt.
They videotaped
Yes, they
his
are.
room
like
at
Kansas
4
City
o'clock.
police.
No,
No, it's a
we're
different
for
level.
sure.
It's a different level of
It's
famously
just a
corrupt.
different level of population.
No,
They-
well,
No.
no.
They videotaped his room at 4 o'clock. There were no bloody socks on the floor. They re-videotaped it at 4:15. There's bloody socks on the floor with labs in them, with the blood going all the way through the sock, which is impossible if your foot's actually in the sock. So, I mean, it's just all kinds of stupid crap that they did. The cop carried around the vial of blood in his pocket all day long.
That was really stupid.
Are you
Yeah.
serious?
Oh,
Bill
yeah.
and
Yeah,
I will go
really
down in the history as one of the
Oh.
worst cops of all time.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
this is why it'd be a fun podcast.
Oh,
just
yeah.
on
But
this
that
Yeah,
would be a
just-
Brentwood cop.
just
There's like
on-
in the luxury.
Yeah,
Those are the
absolutely.
luxury cops. It's like Beverly Hills cops. They
Yeah.
don't even know how to police.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And out there in podcast land, stay tuned because there will be an OJ edition of the podcast. But I think that should be hilarious, which moves us forward in time to the what the fucks that I added to the list. And
Saw these coming a mile away.
first being Sarah Palin.
Sarah.
What to start with about Sarah Palin?
So, can I ask a question?
Please.
Dave, we know
Yes.
that you are a Republican.
Yes.
How did you feel about Sarah Palin
What
during the election?
You thought what the fuck?
in the years after.
You thought what the fuck at the time?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, she hasn't
McCain was a
redeemed
weak
herself
candidate.
in any way.
McCain was really a weak candidate in the first place, in my opinion. I just thought, he literally got the nomination due to the fact that he was next in line. He had been in government way too long. McCain is one of these people who should have gone away a long time ago. I think Senator McCain has served his country well. I don't have a problem with that. But he should have gone away about 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
He really should have. Even after the election, he should have just retired
Just
to the ranch
retired,
and had a good time. But, he didn't even hardly vet anybody else. He had gone to a gubernatorial conference, and Palin was there, and she's good looking, fast talking, straight shooting talking.
Yeah, she's good in the
Person,
room.
and she
But-
had done fairly well as a governor of Alaska, but it's Alaska. I mean, Alaska is a
But she
wild
hadn't been
territory
very-
that has a ton of oil revenue for every citizen that lives there, and
When they had an amazing
But how long had
senator
she
in
been
Ted
governor?
Stevens.
Wasn't that a couple
It's like
years?
one term, yeah.
Yeah, it
but
wasn't.
so you had a lot of other better candidates out there. I mean,
Actually, a half a
I've
term.
always
She
been,
was a mayor first.
I always thought somebody like if he'd gone with Mitt Romney as his running mate in that situation, even though that proved wrong because a lot of people want to vote for a Mormon, which was just insane.
At
okay,
that
the person
time,
government.
it's kind of funny because now it doesn't. Well, maybe now it's a big issue again, but.
But I think he picked the wrong running mate for the time. I think he wanted to pick a woman. I think he wanted to try to have somebody out there. If he really wanted to pick a woman, there was a lot more candidates out there that would have been a lot more interesting. You look at somebody like Condoleezza Rice. You could have gone with a black educated woman that is just incredibly intelligent and charismatic and knows her stuff.
I don't think they would
not
have allowed
allowed
that.
together at all.
They won't
So-
they won't even accept a white woman, much less any other race.
Right. So, I think they would in today's world. I don't think that's totally true.
There's no
anymore.
chance following the Iraq War that you could have gotten Condoleezza
Yeah.
Rice and won.
But
the
he made a bad
election.
choice and definitely paid the price for it. So
I honestly I do not believe he made the worst choice. And again, looking back on things, you can go, she's a moron, and you gotta agree. But I think you gotta consider what he was up against at the time. And they did the HBO documentary, which I thought was fairly compelling in laying out the reason why. I mean, he had to do something big. You could not have taken a Mitt Romney or yet another white dude, and
they would
who
have-
just gives the same old boring
they would have
economic speech.
overreached him as far as their pop.
I don't think anybody ever reaches.
I
John
don't. I
McCain.
just don't think he had the popularity and the charisma.
He did. He lost it in the primaries. I mean, John McCain was a phenomenally popular guy, But that was because he would always go against the Republican Party on a lot of things. He was a classic guy you and I have talked about a million times. He was the Bob Dole, Tip O'Neill, let's get shit done guy. And would do stuff to make the government actually go forward.
I respect him for that.
Yeah, and respect him for it.
You always respect people for it till you get into a primary, and you literally have to flip back on everything you said to make the crazies vote for you so you win to get to the general. And then you need to flip back to try to get back to the center somehow.
Right.
And at that point, it was just nobody knows who the hell you are anymore. And so he had to do something big. And he's going up against one of the smartest, most eloquent, hope-inspiring candidates that's ever run, who had infinitely less experience than he did. So, I mean, on the experience level, they both had about the same level of experience. I mean, he was a state senator who spent one term in the U.S., a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't have any qualifications either. So
it wasn't qualifications.
It was just that he was smart and she was a moron.
Right.
But remember the huge bump he got on the polls after picking her, and she gave incredible speeches.
Yeah, that's to say she's good in the room. She's not good one-on-one against a smart person.
Once she had to sit down and talk national politics.
Let me give you a perfect example of Sarah Palin. Trump was campaigning in Iowa, and if everybody remembers, he brought out Sarah Palin, because Sarah Palin was endorsing him.
Yeah.
And that was the most uncomfortable I've ever seen Trump in my life, when he had to stand off back on the stage, and Palin's up there going through her yeehaws. And the dude was uncomfortable. I mean, real uncomfortable. She was doing her thing, and it's her thing, and she's good at it. But
that's an endorsement you need to turn.
It was kind of like
I think at some point you do need to.
What the hell I just get myself into?
Yeah, I think anybody who has attached themselves to Sarah Palin for any length of time comes away with the same thing that I came away with, and why she wound up on my list. What the fuck? Which brings us to today. And okay, so Donald Trump wound up on my list of what the fucks. Not because he's an in general what the fuck, but because I think the result of the election, I actually believe, even for people who voted for him, was still what the fuck. And now, it was like they. I think people were in such disbelief it actually happened. I think it was kind of the same response as kind of black people with the OJ case. Just what the fuck? Like, you couldn't believe it happened. Did they just say, the president-elect, 45th president-elect Donald Trump? And I think that was the what the fuck, because I think so many people discounted the possibility of it happening. And I'm a female to tell you, I definitely never discounted the possibility of it happening. I didn't vote for him, wouldn't have voted for him for 100 different reasons, but I never discounted the fact that it could happen.
In the last 2 or 3 weeks, I really saw the possibilities of it happening, because I was watching some of Hillary's speeches at the time, and she was melting down. And she was losing it at that point, and she was not garnering a great public opinion from it. And did she suffer from Comey and the emails and all this? That's true, but more than anything, she suffered from herself.
I think you can only take so much before you do break. It doesn't. I mean, she's a human being.
I think you're right. I think she kind of broke at the end there.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think she did. I think honestly, she thought she was so far ahead that they just went. I feel like it was like watching the Chiefs game yesterday.
Yeah,
you think you're going to win the game, you just don't want to make a mistake,
right?
Yeah.
So you just stop.
Well, and I think it's like you said. I think with when we were talking Dewey and Truman, I think it was, if you underestimate your opponent, you're bound to lose to them. And I think America underestimated Donald Trump.
Go ahead.
No.
In this case, I think the media actually was a huge disservice. And working in the media, I think, in fact, that most people believe that were on the Democratic side that Hillary was going to win, and that was because of the media. And they gave everybody this idea, and I don't know if it added to the fact that maybe people didn't get out that should have because they thought it was the slam dunk. I mean, everybody believed she was going to win.
Which is the actual reason that I said it could happen. Because I felt like every news outlet, even conservative news outlets, were saying that it's very, very likely that Hillary's going to win this thing. And so I think the Democrats were like, I think they felt comfortable. So, because I've talked to and listened to other podcasts and of so many people who were like, I didn't get out and vote, and now I regret it, or at the time I blew off all of the stuff going on around me, and I wish I wouldn't have at the time, and so I think I was talking one day, or I was talking about like all of the protesters at the beginning, and how like a large chunk of the arrested protesters hadn't even registered or definitely hadn't voted. So there was like half of the people that they were arresting from the protests. It's like it's too late.
That's your typical protester.
Yeah, but it was just kind of
They truly are morons with so much free time on their hands, and like you were the problem and not the answer.
They're obviously not working very much.
That's exactly how I feel about it. And if you want to go back and go, well, Obama's creating all these jobs and blah, blah, blah. Well, then where's your job? Because you apparently either have a shit ton of vacation time or you just got weeks to stand out in the street and complain about shit. When you didn't even bother to register. And I'm not a big believer that just because you don't vote doesn't mean you don't get an opinion.
Yeah.
What I am an advocate of is, seriously, have a real opinion then. Like, if you're this interested in politics, then actually be interested in politics.
But
you're a moron.
We were talking about the number of people that went out and protested, that were arrested, that they showed they were registered voters and didn't vote.
Sure.
I'm like, don't go out and protest something you didn't even fight for.
Right. But this is what I was saying. I don't think you always have the right to protest whether you voted or not. I just think, if you were so enraged, and so engaged in the political system and blah, 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 then you probably would have and should have voted or canvassed or done all those things.
They said half of the registered voters in the country didn't vote.
That also turns around and ties into a what the fuck that's happened this last week. Whereas with the electoral college coming on, and all these electoral college people getting thousands and thousands of emails telling them not to vote for Trump, which is, in my opinion, is a total crock of shit.
Well, you have to remember, though, as a citizen, you only have a certain a way of communicating your distress.
They were
and
also
that's emailing, writing, calling your.
I don't have a problem with that, but these people were harassed.
I mean, well, you got to remember too. Some states are tied to their state's
some are not.
Results, and some are not. And there have been some electors that have said, no matter what my state went for, consciously I can't vote for.
And they got fined $1,000 for switching their vote.
Yeah, and so
that's the penalty.
At the end of it, I'll say this before I end today's podcast. Out there in podcast land, protesting has worked for some things in history, but protest without organization is just out in the street screaming, and that doesn't help anything. So what we have is our vote. So get registered, go and vote, and not just presidential elections, because to tell you the truth,
even local
it starts with the local elections.
Exactly.
It matters.
It all matters. Vote for dog catcher. Whatever the hell you can vote for it, because especially local, that's the stuff that touches your life every day. So And I don't care if you're voting Democratic or Republican or some third party. You want to write in Mickey Mouse, but go and vote. Don't just sit at home and complain at the television or complain at the talk radio show that is already espousing the things that you want to hear in the first place. Actually go and make your voice heard. And how our voice is heard in America is through our vote.
Heck, my mother-in-law voted for the Pope. At least she voted for somebody.
Hey,
I'll tell you, we've had this conversation. I do not want anybody stupid to ever vote. I wish people would not vote. I wish they would stay home. And
I think you should be educated in what you're voting for. Yes.
Well,
That's
yes.
the problem.
The problem is,
The right to vote
I think you're
doesn't
right.
mean you've done the work to vote.
I think
And
that
those are different issues.
yes, I actually do agree with Chris on that point. An educated electorate is what makes the difference.
This is why we have the electoral college.
So, which is the reason why we still have the electoral college. So, for all of you out there that is saying get rid of the electoral college, I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be some things about the electoral college called into question or some level of modernization of the process. But what I will say is, if you're at home, complaining because you didn't avail yourself of the rights that you have as an American citizen, I'm not saying don't complain. I'm saying, what the fuck? And with that, I'm going to end this podcast in the way I end all podcasts, and that is with the toast that started it all for me, and that is to good times with good people.